Hey everyone, welcome back to another sketchbook sessions. I finally managed to put together something for this week. I've been putting it off for a while now, so here we are. For this episode, we're working on two portraits. One is obviously a very anime inspired portrait. It's of a character from Jujutsu Kaisen, and the other is going to be an ink drawing, a typical portrait that I usually do. So for this piece, I'm using alcohol markers as well as fine liners. The reason why I decided to do this portrait is that I've been rewatching Jujutsu Kaisen the past few days. We're on a long holiday where I'm at, so I have plenty of time to just binge watch anime, and I've just been doing that. And I remember liking this one scene, like the expression on this character's face. His name is Fushiguro, Megumi, and I thought I'd capture it. If you're not into anime drawings, you can go ahead and skip this one and then just jump to the second portrait I made. I'll leave a timestamp link on the description below so you can find it. Back to this drawing, I'm using alcohol markers, particularly Copic markers and Uhuhu markers with this one, although I mostly use Copics. For some reason, as much as I love the nibs on the Uhuhu markers, I actually prefer the subtle colors of the Copic markers. They have that more realistic look instead of the harsh, that vibrant marker look that most other alcohol markers have. Even though you can get subtle shades with the Uhuhu markers, there's something so beautiful with the coloring for the Copics that I still really enjoy. They're just, of course, extremely expensive to buy, which is a downside to using them. But if you can afford it, then I would suggest go for it. Here you see me working or adding shadows to the face. I'm using both cool and warm gray tones for this one. The coloring on this was quite straightforward. I just tried my best to mimic the colors on the screen cap. Even though I didn't have the exact colors or the shades that I needed, I just tried my best to mix and match and see the colors as close as possible to what I'm seeing on the reference. Coloring the entire face is always so nerve-wracking because with alcohol markers, they tend to shift like once they dry. The colors, the real colors that you get from the markers, you will only see after the alcohol has evaporated. So, the first time you lay it, you can see that it's a shade darker because it's wet. But once it dries, there's a very clear difference in the color. With the Copic markers, the colors are actually closer to what you see on the cap, so you don't have to worry about that. You can just refer to the cap color and see what you're gonna get. When working on the uniform as well as on the hair, I had trouble getting it to a darker shade, so I had to go over it twice or 3 times in some areas just to get it to the right value or the right dark shade that I needed. You can actually use just straight up a darker color already, but I like to build up my tones rather than go dark immediately, because once you put in the black or a much darker shade, you can't really lighten it anymore. So I'd rather use lighter colors and then build up towards the darks that I need, like by layering colors rather than just going for the black marker or the darkest marker that I have for that particular area. I'll leave you guys here and I'll jump in the subs for any additional little tidbits that I have during this process. So this is the second sketchbook portrait that I made. As you can see, it's very different from the first one. This is a lot more traditional pen and ink drawing. I'm using brush pens for this one. I was too lazy to grab my actual inks and brush, so I decided to just grab whatever was close at hand. For this particular instance, I'm using a platinum signature brush pen, and I think it's a calligraphy pen actually. And I really love the nib or the tip on this one, it's a bit harder and not flexible at all, but so it gives me a lot of control, especially for the fine details like the eyebrows as well as on the lips. My only beef with using smaller brush pens is that they take a much longer time to cover a larger area. So that's something that you need to take into account, especially if you're timing yourself, when doing the drawing. On both drawings, I actually noticed that I left out the eyes for last. Usually I would start with the eyes, but for some reason I left them out for both of these. I don't know if my process is changing, but yeah, I guess sometimes it's good to switch it up. And sometimes it just really depends on the piece that you're working on, I guess. Anyway, I will be working on the hair for this one. The hair was one of the most tedious parts, I guess, because it took a long time with the small nibs, but I did like the control and accuracy I got with creating individual strands of hair, or at least the general shape of it. So yeah, that's, I guess, the trade-off with using smaller nibs or smaller brush pens. I'll jump in the subs and let you guys enjoy this one, so I'll see you towards the end. And we're almost at the finish line. This is where I started to add the shading using a small mechanical pencil. I actually honestly regret adding the shading. I should have just kept it as is and maybe added a background instead, or added tones on the background for contrast, really. But because I didn't like how it turned out, how the face turned out with the shading, it looked so uneven. And I also couldn't find my blending stump. And anyway, there's a lot of things I regret with this one, but I guess, I just wanted to go ahead and move on afterwards. So. And here's the finished piece. And here's both of them together. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode, and I'll see you next time. Bye.